Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander Lucard, and I am an HMS administrator for Montgomery County. In today's training, we are going to show agency administrators how to update their bed and unit inventory. Now, only people with system admin or agency admin access will be able to do this. But even if you don't have access, it's okay to watch this video because it's important to understand what your bed and unit inventory is. So let's get started. Let's get right into it and take a look. We're here on the home screen. We're going to go over here on the left-hand side and click on the admin button. We click on that, and this takes us to all the different admin functions that we have. The amount you have will vary depending on if you're an agency or system admin. So it's okay if your screen doesn't look exactly like that. We're going to go click Provider Admin, and then we're going to choose a program. I already have it set up for us to choose Neville, but we're going to take a look at several different program types so you understand the difference. So we're going to click on Neville, and that's going to take us to the provider profile. That's the default page here for your provider admin. We're going to click Standards Information, and we are going to scroll down to the bed and unit inventory. Currently, we can see that Neville's bed is from 3/5/2022 to 5/9/2022 with a total of 200 beds. All right. So we're saying that from this time period, from March 5th to May 9th, we had 200 beds. In real life, it's not at 5/9. I just put this in so that you could have a quick example of what it looks like. So what we're saying is that this men's shelter serves a maximum of 200 clients. Let's go in and take a look right now and show you what a finished one looks like. So we can see our provider, because we're in Neville, that's the default. We named it to be the exact same thing, Neville Street Men's Shelter. The COC code, we only have one option. We're going to choose MD601. This must be filled out. And then we have our household types. We have households without children, households with at least one adult and one child, or households without any adults. It's just children. Households with only children. We don't choose this one. The third one we never choose because we don't have any of these programs here in Montgomery County that use our Service Point HMIS system. So if you're a singles program, you're choosing households without children. If you are a family program, you're choosing household with at least one adult and one child. Because Neville Street only serves adult males, no children, it's a household without children program. Bed type, facility, voucher, or other. If you are an actual shelter or a location where the clients are housed, it's going to be facility-based. If it's voucher-based, like it's HOC or it's RRH or it's HIP, things like that, you're going to be voucher-based. But shelters like Neville are going to be facility-based, or any, say, permanent housing program, like a single room occupancy, or where you actually house the clients in that building. Maybe Dorothy Day, for example, it's a transitional program, but they actually live out there. So it would be a facilities-based program. And then the availability. Is the program year-round, seasonal, or overflow? Right? In this case, we're saying year-round. And then the total bed inventory. This is what you are contractually obligated, right? How many beds are in your contract? You have 200 beds. So that's what we have. We have 200 beds in the contract. So we're saying that the total bed inventory is 200 beds. Now, this is going to change based on your contract, and we're going to talk about what family programs do in a little bit. But in this case, we're saying that we have 200 beds for the Neville Street Shelter. And again, always check your contract to see what your maximum is, whether it's by total number of beds or total number of households that you are supposed to serve contractually. So we can see here of the total inventory, what number of beds are dedicated to. And then we have a breakdown of various types, 3 of which are retired. But how many of these beds are for chronically homeless veterans? The answer is 0. How many are for youth veterans? A youth is 18 to 24. 0 are dedicated just to those type of clients. And when we say dedicated, what we're meaning is that only that specific subgroup can use these beds. Any other veteran bed? 0. So we're saying that none of these beds are for veterans and veterans only. Chronically homeless youth, 0. Any other youth, as long as they're 18 to 24, we can see we have 15. Any other chronically homeless, 0. And then non-dedicated bed inventory, 185. These should add up to your total bed inventory. And in this case, Nebula is saying 15 of their 200 beds are for anyone as long as they are between 18 to 24, and the other 185 are for any single male adult. So this is our breakdown. Unit inventory, we have 1 unit, we have 1 shelter. So we're saying that we have 1 shelter, 1 bed list of 200 clients, 15 are youth, 185 are non-dedicated. The start date is 3/5/2022, and the inventory end date is 5/9/2022. So we're saying that this is true from 3/5 to 5/9. Again, in real life, this is still active. The 5/9 is not there. I just wanted to put it in so you could see it being filled out. Don't worry about these retired fields. It means they don't exist anymore. Don't worry about them. Don't fill them out. You can't. And the McKinney-Vento funding, yes or no. If you have McKinney-Vento funding, you would know that. In this case, we have no for the shelter. And we hit save. And then you can see we remove the end date just so it doesn't confuse the actual Neville people watching that. Now, if we want to make an edit, we would go back in, and that's when the end date goes in. We treat this just like a HUD verification. So, as you would do with your income or your disabilities or your non-cash benefits or your health insurance, you end the old one before you start the new one. So you would do a pencil, and that's where we do our little 5/9/2022. We'd hit save. And then we'd add a new one, and we'd fill out this information with a start date of 5/10/2022, so there's no overlap. And we'd leave that end date blank because it's currently active. Right? If we remove the end date, like we did with our sample here, if we remove the end date, we are going to be saying that it's currently active. All right. And again, one more time, just to show you, make sure that this is blank. There you go. So now it is saying that it's currently active. It's also important to note that if you are a low barrier shelter like Neville, you need to have it match your shelter point module. So if you have 200 beds here, 1 unit, 200 beds here, your shelter point module should be the same. So let's go take a look at shelter point, which is under module settings, shelter point, and unit list. And here we can see that we have 197. So in this case, we would need to figure out why we're off by 3 beds. And then we'd have to figure out which is right. Is the Nebula 200 correct? Or is this various breakdown over here under shelter point correct? For a shelter, for a low barrier shelter, your shelter point module must match your bed and unit inventory understanding information. For all other programs like HIP or rapid rehousing or permanent housing, they don't have to match. You technically aren't supposed to be using shelter point for our end user 3, our permanent housing clients, whether it's PSH, OPH, RRH, HIP. So you could have like 3 million beds here under shelter point and 56 under your provider admin. But here we want to have them match up. So what we would do is we go, why are these different? And then we would email and we would double check and we'd make sure that the numbers are correct. So we go, okay, shelter point has 197, but standards has 200. So we'd email and be like, which of these are correct? And then we would make the switch. We would make a fix. Right? And then we would go in and we would make a fix if needed. So if this needs to be closed out and we need a new one, we'd end the old one and start a new one at 197. Or if it just turns out we made a typo, maybe there's a miscommunication, this was always supposed to be 197 from March 5th on, we do 197, just like that. And we would update. Now, again, because this is a men's shelter, a single shelter for only adult individuals, we're making sure that we have this correct. There's 1 unit with a total number of 200 beds. But what do we do for a family program that is, right? Well, for a family shelter, it should be pretty similar. For a family shelter, your contract should say, oh, you're serving a maximum of, say, 20 households with a total of 80 people. However, what if your contract only says the number of households? Like, let's take a look for, right, we're going to do a rapid rehousing family program. We go in, and we can see that we've got 108 beds. We're saying, so in this case, for a family program, your unit inventory is the number of households. For a singles program or households without children, your unit inventory is going to be 1 for a shelter, or your unit inventory is going to be the number of clients that you have. So for a unit inventory, if you had, say, a rapid rehousing program and you had 33 units, 1 for each of your households, and you were a singles program, you'd be 33 units, 33 beds. But for a household, it's going to be 33 units because you have 33 households. And then your beds are either going to be determined by your contract. Your contract might say 33 households, maximum of 108 beds. Otherwise, there's a formula that we use. And that formula, slightly varies from year to year. As of right now, it's 3.2. So what we would do is we would multiply that 33 times 3.2 to give us 105.6, or round it up to 106. So why is this at 108? There might be a good reason for it. So, for example, we might actually have 108 clients that were in the program when we did the calculation. And so even though the calculation said 106, we bumped it up to 108 so we weren't over capacity. We wanted to be at 100%. So, or it could be that their contract actually said 106. Another option could be that maybe the formula was slightly different when this was calculated back in 2021. Maybe the formula was, and whatever it was, gave us 108. Again, remember that formula changes every year ever so slightly. And so once we have the formula for how many beds you should have as a households program, you do your number of beds and you figure that out by your units, number of households times that number. In this case, the formula we currently have, again, let's show that one more time. 33 for the number of households times 3.2, which is the current average, which would be 105.6 or 106. So we would have to do one of two things. We'd either just check and see, oh, are we actually at 108 instead of 106? If we are, that would explain why someone put in 108 beds. Otherwise, we would start a new unit for this fiscal year, and we would go up and we drop it to 106 because that's what the calculation gives. Again, knock on wood, your contract says specifically how many units you have for a household. Again, units are households, and beds are the number of clients. For a household program, you're going to multiply that 33, which is this is the households that this program is contracted, by that number, which we had 3.2, and it gave us 106. So then if it's off here like 108, we just do some detective work and see, is this supposed to be 108 or was it a typo? A 6 can look a lot like an 8. It's easy to make a typo. And then we would just double check and we would see what's correct. And again, if this goes up, as we can see, this went from 100 to 108. As you can see, they were doing it year by year like they're supposed to be doing. And that's okay, because it will based on that vacancy number if their contract does not have a set number of clients for their family program. Again, singles programs, it's going to be more likely that you have a set number because your units and your beds are going to be the same. 33 clients would be 33 beds, but households going to change because one household might have 6 people, another might have 2. So that's why they have that number that they calculate here at Montgomery County, and we would just do a multiplication to give us the number of beds that you were supposed to have for the calendar or fiscal year in question. Again, I know that can be a little confusing, but here we can see that they went up from 100 beds. They went from 20 units at 100 beds to 33 units at 108 beds. And again, if it doesn't look right, that's where you look at your contract. That's where you look at how many clients you're actually serving as a maximum currently. And then you would make the update by creating a new bed and unit inventory list. In this case, if we know it's supposed to be 106, then we're going to start it off. We could end it for today, 508. And then we can start a new one where it's down to 106. Every program is going to be different. That's why I say check your contract. Make sure that your contract says specifically how many households, if you're a family/households with children program, or how many units, which would be single individuals, if you are a household without children program. So your contract's going to say, and you just have to check. Another thing I want to show you is going to be if you have 2 units open at the same time, right? So for this Dorothy Day, we only have one. They only have 1 bed inventory. But if we look at Dorothy Day Men, we can see that it is set up to have 2 unit inventory, 15 regular beds and 3 medical beds. And again, this is a households without children program. And this is to help differentiate, if you would like, on this screen. Really, we just need the total number of clients served. But in this case, they're making it match Shelter Point, where Shelter Point has 2 different lists, one for regular beds and one for medical. And you can set up your bed and unit inventory this way as well. So if you wanted to have a straight youth bed, you wanted to have a straight chronically homeless veterans bed, you wanted to have a generic, just like this, you can do it. We can see here that we have 2 different units, and we can update this as needed. Perhaps someday we won't have any medical beds, and we would just fold those medical beds into the regular Dorothy Day. Maybe we'll increase the number of medical beds. In that case, we end the old, and we would start the new. But once a year, we want to take a look at this and make sure that the numbers are correct, especially for those household programs where they have a sliding scale because their contract doesn't say specifically the number of beds, it just says the number of households. We want to go in and update this once a year. For a singles program like this, it's going to stay pretty static because your contract is going to say a set number of beds because this is a household without children program. So it's going to say you serve a maximum of 15 clients. So your bed is 15, right? So you can see here 15, 15, 15. And this should be 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. 3 units because you are serving 3 individuals. Each of those individuals takes a bed, and they're non-dedicated beds because there is no such category in here as medical beds. It's just a Montgomery County thing. So again, this can be a little tricky, especially if you are a program that is using Shelter Point outside of a low barrier shelter. Remember, a low barrier shelter, your units under bed and unit inventory should match total wise what you have in Shelter Point. For something like a permanent housing program, they're completely separate. So for a low barrier shelter, think of your bed and unit inventory here and your Shelter Point as identical or conjoined twins, either one. And for all other programs, it's fraternal twins. They can look different and it won't be anything bad, but for a actual shelter, we want them to match up. And again, all we're going to do is we're going to look through each of our programs at the time in the agency admin and say, yes, this matches our contract. If it matches our contract, good. If not, we end the old one and start the new one with the correct bed inventory that we should have for that contract. Again, this can be a little complicated. I've noticed that it is one of those things that is hard to keep track of. Sometimes it's a communication issue. Sometimes it's just you're the last person to learn. And that's true even for us here at SEP. Maybe the contract's updated, but we don't get passed on the information, so we can't update it in the system. Because if you don't know it, you can't update it. So that's why we just want your side of and your agency to look at this as well, because we might not have the information, but you might, and vice versa. So we just want to make sure that we have good communication and that this gets updated. That bed and unit inventory, it's so important we update it, especially for things like the housing inventory count or HIC, for point in time PIT, for the LSA, longitudinal system analysis. We just want to make sure that these numbers are correct. Again, once a year, just go into your program, take a look, go into your admin, provider admin, and start to look through all your programs and make sure that that bed and inventory is correct. Again, for low barrier shelters, for homeless shelters, you want to make sure that ShelterPoint matches your bed and inventory list. But for all other programs, it's not important. They don't need to match up. It's not something that is required in the same way that it is for an actual shelter. So it's okay if you have, say, 300 beds in ShelterPoint, but only 161 in your bed and unit inventory because you might have set up for a worst case scenario in ShelterPoint. Again, low barrier shelters, ShelterPoint, bed unit inventory need to match, but for all other programs, they do not need to match. And again, you're just going to admin, you're picking your program, standards information, scrolling down to bed and unit inventory, and you're just making sure that everything matches up. If it doesn't, you're going to start a new one after ending the old one. So you can see here, they ended the old one on 2/15, started a new one on 7/15. The total bed inventory is the same, but there might be a difference, say, based on how the beds are out. That's all I've got for you for this time. Again, this can be a little confusing. So if you need a little help understanding how to maintain your bed and unit inventory, please reach out to myself, Faison, and Ashley, your HMIS team. Email us at hmis@montgomerycountymd.gov, and we will be happy to work with you on a one-on-one basis, maybe hold your hand a little bit more to understand what you need to do for the bed and unit inventory to make sure that it matches your contract. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to doing another training with you again in the future. Have a great day.